this two-pronged approach to a customer analytics practice, creating a customer analytics practice. So first off would be customer analysis, or you'll hear me call it customer reporting. And that's where you're tracking and evaluating the key KPIs, just the KPIs around your customer's behavior, so that you can understand how it's changing over time. And so the typical ways to look at your customer analytics would be to segment your file, your house file, your customer data, that is, by RFM, recency, frequency, monetary. It's a very simple way that's been used historically by retailers for decades to segment one's file so that you can understand how many buyers are recent and engaged buyers, how many buyers are about to churn or lapse, for example. The monetary bucket is looking at how much money each of these groups spend, right? And those parameters of those buckets will change depending on what type of brand it is and what their AOV is and what they're selling, of course. And then lastly, frequency. So how often they purchase with the brand, one-time buyers up to four-time buyers, for example. And then you can look at, of course, different combinations of those segments, people who are really recent buyers who spend a lot of money and buy really frequently. That's a very high value segment of buyers that you want to make sure that you nurture and that you're sending them coupons or you're thanking them for being such a great customer, right? Or conversely, there might be another segment that is lapsed buyers who used to buy really often. Maybe they used to be 4 times buyers and they used to spend a lot of money. That's really scary, right? You want to try to get that buyer back because they used to be really engaged, but there's something about that segment that's they're not coming back and purchasing anymore. So by creating these customer reports, you can take a look at the behavior of the file over time, see how segments are moving among the file, see how new customers are coming into the file and how they move throughout the file to ultimately make decisions. And then you can create business questions and ultimately create an experiment on it. You're definitely going to end up forming a hypothesis when you start looking at customer reporting. Some question will bubble up out of the reporting like, hey, why are those customers that we acquired 1 year ago have lower LTV than the customers that we've been acquiring 2 years ago, for example? And so you might want to take that segment out and run an experiment on it to find out why. So that leads me to the second pronged approach, which is customer experimentation. So this is figuring out how you can optimize a customer file for a brand to either drive additional revenue objectives or drive additional profitability objectives. A lot of brands will just do a baseline experiment test just to figure out what is the incrementality of Facebook, for example. Almost every brand that we've worked with takes their customer list and they put it up on Facebook and they put some media against it and they say goodnight to it. They just let that thing run out there, but they have no idea if that's a waste of money or not. They don't necessarily know if it's actually driving any incremental performance. And so a very simple test can be designed to where you take your customer file, you take a representative sample out of it, pull them out from Facebook media, and then you compare the conversion rates of the test group that saw Facebook ads versus the control group that didn't see Facebook ads, right? And so we'll talk a little bit about what that test design looks like, what that feasibility analysis looks like, et cetera. Or you can get much more complex with the test designs, right? You can pull a sample out of the file if it's a very large customer file and it's feasible, and you can split it up into even more segments. People that are going to get catalog plus Facebook plus email, for example, people who are only get catalog, only Facebook, only email, Facebook plus email, catalog plus email, people that don't get anything, for example. So the opt-in status as well, in terms of whether or not people are opted into email and SMS, is another huge segmentation variable that we like to bring in for customer experimentation. So on the segmentation front, audiences across a house file can be split using a variety of variables. We've already talked about recency, frequency, and monetary. Of course, those parameters for each of those buckets would change depending on the brand what they're selling and how long they've been in business for example. There's other ways that you could segment a file when customers were inducted into the file, when they first became a new customer with the brand, for example. Customer type is another one, especially if it's a subscription business. You might want to segment your file by folks who are subscribers or folks who are up for renewal. Opt-in status, we just talked a little bit about that. There's all different permutations that you can take a look at as it relates to opt-in status. And then lastly, you can bring in any other custom flag that makes sense to the brand. For example, one time we were working with a brand during COVID, and they were a fashion brand and they decided to sell masks. And they typically never sold masks before. And what they found was that the mask buyers were one and done people. They would come in, they bought the mask, but they never came back to the brand to buy ever again. And so the brand wanted to bring in this flag of mask buyers so we could make this individual audience so that we could test out different promotions, different media frequencies, different platforms, different creatives. So we could figure out how can we get these people to come back and make another purchase with the brand.